Hello, everyone. I'm Corey Andrew Powell, and I'm joined today by Janet T. Fan, a senior technical product manager at Amazon Kuiper and founder of Thriving Elements, which is an organization that mentors underrepresented girls in STEM. Janet is also an author of the book Boldly You, a story about discovering what you're capable of when you show up for yourself. Janet, welcome to Motivational Mondays.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me here. And I love your energy, Corey.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, you know what? I will tell you, it's consistent. This is pretty much me, like 24 hours a day. So some people may think it's too much, but this is just who I am. So
Just be
thank you.
you.
I
Just be
appreciate it.
you.
Yes, and you talk about that, and that's a philosophy that you subscribe to. So I will
Mhm.
trust you when you tell me that because it's done well for you to live and be your most authentic self. So,
Mhm.
before we begin, though, I know that a big part of your story is, of course, anchored in your ethnicity. So I would love for you to share what is your heritage, your ethnic background.
My ethnicity, I'm Vietnamese, and then I was born
Okay.
here in Seattle, and so I will identify as Vietnamese American.
Okay. Yes, yes.
Hmm.
And I know that's such a big part of your story too, is the first generation Vietnamese, I guess, parents who are here in America, raising an American daughter, right? And having this sort of
Right.
conflict a little bit of, I guess, the cultural conflict as far as maybe what life would have been like raising you in Vietnam versus America. So can you talk a little bit about some of that experience and the
Hmm.
difficulties you had with that?
Yeah, absolutely. I thought it was just me as I was growing up, but later on in life, I realized there are others who are straddling this line between two cultures, being where their parents came from and their ethnicity, and then being American. And so, for my parents, they were refugees from Vietnam because of the war. And so, coming here and raising me, it was just difficult for them as they didn't know how to navigate the American education system, the American professional system, and then also, especially when you're going through grade school, middle school, high school, you see all of your Americans doing X, and then your parents telling you you can't do X because they don't understand what that is. Or me wanting to do community service or having the opportunity to compete in Future Business Leaders of America at the state level, where I have to travel all the way across the state, and they challenge me on, well, is that helping you make money? Is it helping you for college? Like, you should be staying at home, because all they knew was staying at home and studying and doing well in school, and your schoolwork is going to get you far. And so they didn't know all of these extra stuff.
Yes, yes. And would you say then those are sort of cultural norms then within the Vietnamese culture would be that would pretty much be the path, right, that your parents would expect in general.
Correct. For their generation and what they knew about the American culture, because a lot of it they learned on TV as well. So, in addition to these cultural norms that they thought were normal based on what they saw on TV, um, it was also reflected on me when they were watching things back in the day. There was like the Jerry Springers, the Jenny Jones, and
Yeah,
they're like,
and they
"Oh,
were
are you?"
terrified.
Yes, they don't want their daughter needing to figure out who the baby's father is. I don't know, right? Or doing
Right, right,
drugs.
right.
And so
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
defending myself, trying to do community service, extracurricular activities, and then also defending myself against what they see on TV.
Yeah. That's so interesting because I had not even thought about the perspective of what a family from another country would assess would be American if they got here
Hmm.
and they turned on like the Housewives or
Yeah.
they turned on Jerry Springer and there's like a chair being thrown across the stage,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. I mean, I didn't even think about, I know they were like, no, you're not leaving the house. So I totally get it. But that does sort of shape the narrative too, that brings you to why you wrote your book. And your book, as I mentioned, is called Boldly You,
Mhm.
and it's a great honest self-assessment. I was reading some of the excerpts online, and share a little bit about that book and why you wrote it.
Yeah, so how I got to writing it was because I had started Thriving Elements, the nonprofit, where I'm helping girls who are growing up the same way that I grew up, underserved, underrepresented to help them get into the STEM field. So I'm in tech, and what I've noticed all around the world when I travel to different places for work that I'm often the only woman at the table. And that's why I started this nonprofit. So, because of this, friends had asked me, like, why are you doing this in the middle of your technology consulting career? This is when I was working at PwC and starting this nonprofit. Like, how do you have the time? And I think when you realize this is something that's a problem, so I wanted to bridge the gender disparity in STEM fields through thriving elements. And so, with people asking me why and me sharing with them my story, as well as starting to enter the world of speaking engagements, being asked to be on panels, and then the amazing part for me after being on speaking engagements is speaking to the people afterwards, how they line up and want to ask you more private questions, share a little bit of their story, and share with me, hey, your story, like thanks for sharing your story. It gives me hope, especially those college students. And so I have held in this story for so long. Even those, I would say my close circle didn't know. It was my closest, like two or three friends that would know what was going on at the time. And other than that, everyone thought I was normal, the happy, energetic. So when you tell me that your Corey energy is every day, like that's me, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, and everybody thought I was okay, and I thought I was okay. Um, and so when I heard from these college students, the girls coming up saying, your story gave me hope. Seeing where you came from, which is what I'm going through now, and where you are at today, gives me a path and a light at the end of this tunnel. So then I thought, if I can change somebody's perspective or multiple people's perspectives by sharing my story and being vulnerable, then that's worth it. Then it could change the trajectory of their life. And that's how Boldly You was written.
And when you mention the people who come up and talk to you afterwards, the girls specifically, um, and you're seeing like a wide cross section of ethnicities and backgrounds, right?
Yes,
So, I mean, it's
yes.
relatable to you, but you're seeing a
Hmm.
diversity.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the very first one that really hit me was there's the Washington State Opportunity Scholarship in Washington State, where they award a lot of money to uh, those who are first generation college students. So it could be from different ethnicities, but it could be Americans who come from low income and from a disadvantaged background.
And I think it's amazing too because when you look at your own story of having such adversity and you then go out and help other girls who are also similar, I think it's pretty fascinating that the reality is there's more commonality between these young women. I mean, you take
Right,
away the ethnicity and the physical differences, but
right.
you're probably dealing with helping them through things that are family dynamics that are probably shared across
Hmm.
all races and ethnicities, I would imagine.
Right. Yes, exactly. And like you were saying, I could really resonate with them and understand them as best as I could because I know the struggles, them also having to help their families, some being like the caretakers after school. And I've noticed that they have to fight a bit more than those who are able to grow up in a space and an environment where they have all that support and all the resources. And I know that fighting spirit inside of them can make them successful. And that's why I want to give them these the thriving elements that are built inside of Boldly You. They're very simple, distilled down into five thriving elements, and they're meant to for them to hold on to it and then be able to apply it into their everyday lives.
And part of your story too is that despite the adversity you were going through, you began to make it through that because you had mentors. You had someone or more than one, perhaps, throughout your youth up through when you started to go into college. Um, And is that part of, for you, the whole idea of why it's important to pay it forward as well, because because you benefited from having someone that stepped in and helped?
That's exactly why Thriving Elements got started, because as I was traveling in business class to India, to Sweden, to Germany and France, and all these countries for consulting, I realized, wow, like, how did I get here? How am I sitting here, pressing the button, and then all of a sudden the seat reclines all the way
Yes,
back so I
business
could
class
sleep.
is very cute.
Yes, and you know, real plates, real silverware, real
Yeah, right,
glasses.
right.
It's just, it was so crazy to
Yeah,
me,
yeah.
and I kept reflecting, like, how is this me, and how am I able to be here and do this? And when I kept thinking back on it, it was because of the mentors that have been in my life, especially a mentor I had in high school, Mr. Niendorf, and my IT internship mentor, Joseph Peck. And they just created access and opportunities, and that's why the mission of Thriving Elements is to create access and opportunities for the mentees that come into the program, because that's all I needed. The moment you can open a little bit of a door for me, I will swing it wide open
Yes.
and create more opportunities from that. And that's what I'm trying to send to the mentees in the program. Hey, you're going to get access to somebody who's in the industry, in the STEM field that you're interested in. And it's up to you to take advantage of these opportunities. We, in our program, I tell them, we're not a babysitter's club. We're not here to make sure that you get your projects done, your homework done. Mentees and Thriving Elements already have that in them. They're here then to take advantage of opportunities that are in front of them.
It's so funny. I mean, embarrassingly, I didn't really know what STEM was. Like I kept, like a couple years ago, I kept seeing like the capital STEM, and I'm thinking it's something to do with like botany, with
Hmm.
plants. I didn't know. And
Yeah.
and then when I realized what it was very fascinating because I have two little cousins and I just adore them, and they're sisters. And one was this past Christmas. The one is 5 and the other one is 8. And I called their mom. I said,
Hmm.
Leslie, what would the girls like for Christmas? And
Hmm.
I'm thinking like, a Barbie. I'm thinking totally like sexist girl toys. And
Hmm.
she goes, oh, well, they both want anything with STEM. Anything with STEM. And
Oh,
I'm
so
like, they're
cool.
5 and 8. Like what? I'm like Googling like, what do
Mm.
I get? I mean, a 5-year-old get her STEM. Like literally, they are already building little robots and things, and
Hmm.
they're not even 10. Well, they are 10 now, but yeah. So that's pretty fascinating. And the minute I learned what that was, and I had these two beautiful little girl cousins who wanted it, I cannot get enough of trying to send them like all kinds of technology books,
Oh,
and because I get it
yes.
now, I understand how important
Hmm.
that is to nurture that level, and the whole
Hmm.
idea of coding, girls who code, all those programs, so
Exactly.
important, so important.
Yes. Oh, your story just gave me goosebumps. I'm glad you're able to realize this. And
Yeah.
now they have this adult figure who's encouraging them and
Hmm.
getting them these things that can expose them more into the different STEM fields.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I think in a
Yeah, it's so
way,
cool.
I think in a way other generation, I mean, not to dismantle that it's called STEM, but I think, when I look back on it as a child, there were a lot of products like that out on the market that were kind of hands-on
Hmm.
building things when I was a kid too, but I guess STEM itself wasn't really the term. But I
Hmm.
think that when I look back, those sorts of toys and things that um, allowed kids to use their brains more to build, it's always a positive thing. So yes, I will make sure that these two young ladies follow you as well as they progress in life. So I do want to ask you as well, so you have this wonderful part of the whole full title of your
Yeah.
book. Of course, I want to make sure I have the entire title, which
Hmm.
was Boldly You, a story about discovering what you're capable of when you show up for yourself. So I'm really interested in dissecting the when you show up for yourself part, because
Okay.
I'm going to just take an assessment here. Are you saying there that that's indicative of us showing up, trying to live up to what someone else expects of us versus what we and who we truly are?
It's more of if there's something you innately believe is the right thing to do, then to speak up, and sometimes that's really hard, especially when you're in a vulnerable situation. So it's believing in yourself and then having the courage to act on those beliefs. And it's these beliefs that you have for yourself, not the expectations of others. And what expectations do you have for yourself?
Yeah, and that can be really challenging too, because as you mentioned, part of your dynamic too is that expectation can come from people you really love, right? It can, in your case,
Yep.
it's people you love most. It's your
Mhm.
mother and father with good intention, but
Mhm.
there's still a conflict there of, trying to navigate being true to what you're trying to aspire to do and also not disappointing someone else. And that must be a very
Right.
difficult balance.
It was it was very difficult actually, um and that's why I have this book to provide the guidance and what to think through for the readers. But it's, yeah, really, you know, this you're on this line of, okay, I need to respect my parents and the expectations that they have, and respect them. But then when you take time to really reflect, like, does this really resonate with me? And if it doesn't, then you have to figure out what it does, but you have to do the work to figure out what it does. And you have to be reflective and intentional about thinking, you know, whatever is happening over here isn't working, but I need to figure out what would it be to make it work. And then once you have figured that out, then it's okay, let me start building a plan to make my situation better and make it work for me. And so it's a process. It's not, you can't just do it the next day. But I think the key thing is one, being intentional, and two, the endurance behind following through with your plan. And that's why one of the five thriving elements is be biased for action. There's so many of us who think about, oh, we're in this problem. Oh, this problem would be better if I did XYZ. And you think about, oh, I should do this, I should do that. And then how long is this I should do that? How long has it been in your mind? Sometimes for 6 months, for a year, and sometimes for 5 years, or even longer. And that's why being biased for action is so important, because you have to take action. You have, even if it seems so large, then you need to break it down into chunks, so then it's manageable for you to achieve just the next chunk and then the next chunk.
Well, it's interesting. Yesterday, I was talking to another guest regarding something similar with young people, obviously, because we are a leadership podcast. So our audience range will be the traditional student who may be 18, just going into college for the first year, all the way up to someone who may be 60 plus. And, so that these leadership messages will resonate with all of them across the board. But one thing we talked about yesterday was sort of piggybacking on what you just said. When you're living for someone else, especially when it comes to going to school and a career that maybe someone else suggests you should do because maybe your family has a history in this field and there's good money there. I've seen that backfire so horribly where by 25, 26, 30, the person's burnt out. They don't even like the career. They did it because
Yep.
someone else wanted them to. And it's a harsh reality. And
Hmm.
then you're stuck in a job that you don't like.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's
And
right.
so I think
Hmm.
mostly what I think young people should do is actually go out and experience more, try new opportunities,
Exactly.
right?
Yep. And that's why Thriving Elements is a great safe space for them to explore that. Because mentees who come into the program, or when they're applying for the program, I tell them, you can, in order to apply, you just have to be curious and self motivated. And you can come in as, oh, I barely know what STEM is. I've heard about it, but I don't really know, to, I want to be a biochemical engineer. But just come in and be curious, so that you can work with your mentor to explore either the different options within STEM, the different options in technology, or how do you make the plan to become a biochemical engineer. So we have this range, and like you were saying, it's the ability to allow yourself to explore. And even further, once you enjoy or may think you'll enjoy a particular field, then you need to do an internship or job shadowing and allow yourself some space to fail. Give yourself some of that grace because then you would have already tried doing these things. And even if you find that you don't like it, then that's better than never having tried and not failing and not knowing at all. And so that's also built into those, you have that long goal and those chunks, those segments, like you were saying, along the way that you have set up for yourself to allow yourself to achieve this bigger goal. You're going to fail along the way during that journey, but you just have to get used to it and embrace failure. And we hear it all the time. So many articles, so many videos, so many leadership, um, and you hear it because the people who have failed a lot have learned from these failures, and they want to let you know that it's okay. It's okay.
Wonderful, poignant words of wisdom, Janet T. Fan. Thank you so much for sharing your story and for joining me here today on Motivational Mondays. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Corey, for having me. What an honor.